Everyone thinks the Flashforge AD5X is just another plug-and-play 3D printer you buy, unbox, and forget about. But here's the thing. This machine is way less forgiving than the marketing makes it look, because it actually exposes every weakness in your workflow. I went into this thinking it would be a fire-and-forget beginner box. Instead, over 3 weeks and roughly 45 hours of real-world printing, I found a printer that can be insanely consistent and clean if you treat it like a serious tool, not a toy. And what I discovered along the way is probably not what you expect from the photos on the product page. Before we dive into what I discovered with the AD5X in my tests, if you're already half convinced and just want to check the current best price, I've dropped a link in the description. But stick around, because some of the quirks I ran into are things you absolutely want to know before you hit buy now. So, why did I even pick up the Flashforge AD5X when there are a million printers out there? Look, I was tired. Tired of babysitting budget printers that promised easy printing and then spent every weekend demanding releveling, clogged nozzles, and mystery layer shifts. I wanted a reliable workhorse for functional parts. Brackets, organizers, maybe the occasional cosplay piece. I needed something that could sit on a desk, run quietly in the background, and just work. My last so-called beginner-friendly printer. It gave me a 50-50 success rate and a permanent side gig as a part-time technician. So when I saw the AD5X marketed as a user-friendly, modern desktop printer with auto-leveling, a decent build volume, and cleaner software than the usual suspects, I was skeptical but curious. Could it actually give me decent speed, good quality, and low drama without jumping into super high-end territory? First thing, unboxing and first print. The AD5X comes mostly assembled, and that already removes a lot of chances to mess things up. Setup took me about 20-25 minutes. Remove the packing foam, plug in a few connectors, run the built-in auto-level routine. The touchscreen walks you through filament loading and a test print. My first benchy at 0.2 layer height. Surprisingly clean. The hull lines were tight, no major stringing, and the first layer looked like it had been dialed in by someone who actually 3D prints. But then I pushed it. Scenario 2, long-duration functional print. I sliced a 20-hour tool organizer in PLA, filled most of the build area, and let it run overnight. This is usually where budget printers betray you with a random shift at hour 15. The AD5X, finished without a single skipped layer. Edges were straight, tolerances were usable right off the bed. I measured variance around 0.10.15 from the CAD model, which is absolutely fine for practical parts. But then I went after speed versus quality. I bumped print speeds up significantly from the conservative default profile, cranked infill and outer wall speeds, and ran a set of calibration towers and a fast draft print. Here's where it got interesting. The AD5X can go faster than its default profile suggests, but you do start seeing ringing on sharp corners and a bit of detail loss if you get too aggressive. It is clearly tuned more for reliability than for Bambu-style insanity. For my sweet spot, I landed around 140-160 ms for most PLA prints without wrecking the finish. Then came materials and noise. With PLA and PETG, the printer stayed comfortably in its lane. Adhesion on the flexible build plate was solid, and parts popped off with a flex when the bed cooled. Noise-wise, the motion system and fans are not whisper silent, but they are absolutely reasonable for a home office. You can take calls in the same room without feeling like you're in a server farm. I did light testing with tougher filaments and higher temps, and while the AD5X can technically handle them, it's clear this machine shines most with PLA and PETG for everyday users. Software-wise, Flashforge's slicer is straightforward but not as open or flexible as some community favorites, and that's one of the trade-offs. The most surprising discovery. The AD5X is not magical, but it is boring in the best way once you respect its limits. I invested time up front, dialing in profiles, running test prints, tracking failures. Over roughly 30 individual prints, I only had 2 real fails, one user error on supports, and one due to me pushing speedway past what the default acceleration settings like. Compared to my earlier printers, that is night and day. Expectations versus reality. I expected another plasticky, overhyped, beginner box. What I got was a mid-range, grown-up desktop printer that feels tuned for people who actually want to print things regularly, not constantly mod their machine. Is it perfect? No. The closed-ish ecosystem approach to software will annoy hardcore tinkerers who love endlessly tweaking firmware and using exotic slicer combos. The default profiles lean conservative, which is good for new users but leaves performance on the table until you mess with them. And no, it is not competing with the absolute bleeding-edge high-speed printers that cost way more or run very aggressive motion systems. But here's what nobody tells you. For most people who just want reliable PLA and PETG prints with decent detail, the AD5X hits a really nice balance of usability, consistency, and print quality. It is not too good to be true. It is exactly as good as it looks, once you accept that it is a reliable daily driver, not a drag racer. Now that you know the AD5X is more of a dependable workhorse than a tinkering project, the smart move is to grab it while the price still makes sense in that mid-range bracket. These 3D printer prices bounce around all the time, so check the link in the description for the current best deal and any bundles or discounts available. Bottom line, the Flashforge AD5X is a strong yes for anyone who wants to actually print things instead of constantly fixing a printer. If you're into high-speed experimentation, open firmware hacks, or exotic filaments, you might find it a bit restrictive and want something more open and aggressive. But if you are a maker, small business, teacher, or hobbyist who values reliability, clean PLA and PETG results, and a setup that does not eat your weekends, this is a seriously compelling option. In a world full of 3D printers that promise everything and deliver chaos, the AD5X quietly wins by just doing its job.